What do you do when you're driving home and your car gets T-boned? You are now dealing with a financial emergency. Hey y'all, my name is Cindy Brown. I am a financial coach and budgeting expert here to help you spend money with confidence. I help single black women just like you spend money with confidence because you work too hard to be this broke. Alright y'all, so I am going through it and I just felt like it would be so necessary to talk about financial emergencies because right now I am dealing with a lot of financial emergencies. When it rains, it pours. So literally, my car was totally fine, driving home from work, having a perfectly normal day. There's nothing wrong with my car. In my eyes, I plan to use my car for the next 10 years at least. You know, I'm hoping to take really good care of my car, really hoping to have a really positive experience with this car. Never really had any real issues. Didn't plan to get rid of my car anytime soon. Love my car. I named my car. Anyone who names their car loves their car, right? So, driving home from work, have a life-threatening accident. Car airbags explode. You know, I'm literally just like fearing for my life as I'm driving home. Fortunately, I'm safe. Nothing went wrong. Fortunately, I'm dealing with not dealing with a medical emergency, but once all of that kind of subsides, I realize that I'm gonna have to buy a new car. My car is completely totaled. You know, I don't know how I'm gonna get to work tomorrow. You know, I'm dealing with like a real financial emergency in this moment. And yes, so I thought it would be perfectly fitting to do a video about what to do when you're handling a financial emergency. Like, I am a financial coach, but that doesn't stop me from like living a normal life. You know, I'm not absent from dealing with financial emergencies either, and I thought it would be very helpful to talk through how I have been dealing with the situation. You know, on top of that, just a few days later, my laundry room just starts leaking in the middle of the night. Like on last Thursday, I got in the accident, and then the following Thursday, while I'm dealing with my car emergency, my laundry room ceiling starts leaking. So somebody's water tank burst above me in the condo above mine. And then now I'm dealing with a house emergency as well. So, you know, when it rains, it pours. Like, things don't really happen in isolation. Nothing really stops one emergency from dealing with another. So, you know, all of this is happening, and I just thought it would be very helpful to talk about kind of the steps that I went through in order to handle a financial emergency. So the first thing I wanted to debunk maybe is, what is a financial emergency? Because as a financial coach, people are always coming to me saying, I can't budget because I'm always dealing with an emergency. Like, that is the number one most common thing that I hear as like a problem against budgeting. You can't budget because they're always handling an emergency. A financial emergency is an unplanned, urgent expense something that happens to you, like getting T-boned, your car getting T-boned on your way to work, you know, getting in an accident, you know. And financial emergency is not an unplanned trip to Cabo. Like, your friend asks you if you want to go on an unplanned trip, you know, that's not an emergency, you know. A financial emergency is also not your annual assessment fees or something like that for your condo. Or another example could be your oil change. You know, that is you can plan for an oil change. You can plan for things that just urgently pop up, but it's not something that you didn't just think about. You forgot to think about. So a financial emergency is not something that could be planned for, and it is not something that is not urgent. So a lot of times people like to renovate their homes, and that is a very urgent, that can be a very urgent expense. I mean, that can be an unplanned expense, but it's not urgent. You could plan for it and prepare a little bit better. So financial emergency definition is an unplanned and urgent expense. Both things have to be true for this to be an emergency, a financial emergency. So what do you do when you are dealing with a financial emergency? First, take a breath. You know, I've had to remind myself a lot these past couple of weeks, that even though I'm surprised, God is not. God is not surprised by anything that is happening to me right now. And so I'm just, rolling with the punches. So step one is gonna be to ask yourself, do you actually have an emergency fund? If the answer is no, it's not a big deal. We're gonna talk through some of the things that you could do to deal with your financial emergency as well. If the answer is yes, great. You are prepared for the situation. I know it sucks. I know it sucks to be dealing with a financial emergency and having to use your emergency fund. If you have worked, creating an emergency is extremely, extremely difficult, but having one in an emergency turns a crisis into a minor inconvenience. So it really sucks to use your emergency fund, but that's what it's for, emergencies. So you may be watching this video and you may be asking yourself, what is an emergency fund? Lots of people have all sorts of definitions for emergency fund, but for this channel, an emergency fund is going to be, a fully funded emergency fund is going to be 3 to 6 months of income, not expenses. 3 to 6 months of income would be, so whatever you traditionally plan to bring in as income over 3 months that could sustain you for a 3-month period of time, that is a fully funded emergency fund. So a lot of people use expenses to determine what an emergency fund is, but I like to use income because you can always change your expenses. Whatever you're used to bringing in as income, you can scale that back and be able to make your income stretch a lot further than if you just plan for emergency expenses. So for example, if I save just enough of a mortgage for 3 months, I can't change what my mortgage payment is. However, if I save 3 months of my monthly expenses, I can always scale down different things in order to, like, I can cut a bougie gym membership for a few months in order to save more while I'm dealing with a financial emergency. Or I could cut, different Roth contributions that I'm making. You can change your expenses to fit whatever type of emergency you're dealing with, and your income is what you're used to bringing in, so it means that nothing will stop. 6 months of 6 months of income is as much as I believe that anyone should have for a fully funded emergency fund. And you may be someone who thinks that that's a lot of money to have in a savings account. But I want you to remember that this channel, as I say every video, is for single minority women. And if you are single, you need to have a higher emergency fund, because when you're in a couple, you have dual incomes, and that is a way to diversify your risk a little bit. But as a single woman, having something that secures you in an emergency fund is essential. So I'm going to recommend no more than 6 months of income as your fully funded emergency fund. So the next question you might be asking is, where should I be stashing my emergency fund? You should be stashing your emergency fund in a high yield savings account. So I recommend a high yield savings account as opposed to a traditional savings account, because typically a traditional savings account will only give you like a few cents here and there every couple of months per like $1,000 you have. High yield savings accounts on average can be like 2 to 3% as compared to 0.01% for a traditional savings account. So depending on which high yield savings account you go with, you're gonna typically get a lot more interest as compared to a traditional savings account. And I ask that you don't invest them, because this is for emergencies. When you're dealing with an emergency, the last thing that you want to be dealing with is not being able to get the money out or not having as much as you anticipated having. So a high yield savings account is a great place to stash your emergency fund. So the step 2 is going to be, do you have insurance for this? So usually when you're dealing with some type of emergency, there is some type of insurance aspect associated with it. So for my car accident, I'm dealing with car insurance. For home emergencies, you might be dealing with homeowners insurance. Whatever insurance you are dealing with, go through the necessary steps in order to get the correct insurance reimbursement if you're covered over this sort of situation. So step 3 is going to be pause other financial goals. So if you are someone who is dealing with debt repayment, or you are, on different steps of financial freedom, maybe contributing to your Roth IRA or saving for a house or things like that, it might be a good time while you're dealing with a financial emergency to pause those sorts of situations and direct all your financial resources towards dealing with the financial emergency. So step 4 is going to be evaluate your expenses. So as I've said, cutting my bougie gym membership for right now so that I can focus on rebuilding my emergency fund, and it sucks, but it's something that you have to consider. Other expenses that just aren't necessary probably should be cut for the short period of time while you're dealing with the financial emergency. Step 5 is going to be prepare for the next emergency. Don't forget that once you overcome the financial emergency, that you do have to also prepare for the next emergency. You have to add that money back, because the worst thing that can happen is that you start dealing with another emergency, and then when you look at your emergency fund, you don't have any money left because you used it from your last emergency. So just take a few months, maybe. So just take a few seconds after you are dealing with your current financial emergency, after that situation has been overcome, to reassess the damages and rebuild your emergency back to that 3 to 6 months of income. Also, for tips on how to save more money, you can always refer back to the video how to realistically save $5,000 to $10,000 in a year. There are some great tips in there about how to save large sums of money, especially for emergency funds. Alright, so that's my method for dealing with a financial emergency. Let me know in the comments below, what was your last financial emergency and how did you deal with it? Like this video to let me know that you enjoyed the video and you found some helpful tips in the video. Also, make sure you subscribe so you never miss another video. And that's it for today. Bye!